The octagon has seen legends rise and fall, but few matchups have stirred the kind of anticipation, debate, and raw excitement as this one. Two of the most feared welterweights in the UFC, each with a story etched in struggle and triumph, now stand on a collision course. On one side, Leon Edwards, the calculated, battle-tested champion, whose journey from the streets of Birmingham to UFC gold was anything but easy. On the other, Khamzat Chimaev, a relentless force of nature, a man who stormed through the division like a hurricane, leaving destruction in his wake. The question is simple, but chilling. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Edwards' rise wasn't built on overnight success. It was years of grinding, setbacks, and moments where the world seemed ready to move on without him. He fought in empty arenas when no one was watching, honed his craft in the shadows, and refused to be overlooked. Even when he was counted out, even when an entire division tried to push him aside, he kept coming. Then came his crowning moment against a man many thought was untouchable. A perfectly placed head kick changed everything. But in the fight game, greatness isn't just about reaching the top, it's about staying there. And now, he faces a man who doesn't just want his title, he wants to break him. Khamzat Chimaev doesn't believe in slow rises or careful planning. His philosophy is simple: smash first, talk later. From the moment he entered the UFC, he defied every expectation. 3 fights in the span of 2 months. Knockouts so brutal they barely lasted a minute. Grappling so suffocating it felt inevitable. He called out everyone: champions, contenders, even entire weight classes. People laughed at first. Then they watched as he ragdolled world-class fighters and realized the hype wasn't just real, it was terrifying. Styles make fights, and this one is as unpredictable as they come. Edwards is a master of precision, timing, and technical brilliance. He doesn't waste energy, doesn't rush into danger, and knows how to control the pace of a fight. But Chimaev thrives in chaos. He drags opponents into deep waters, forces them into mistakes, and makes every second inside that cage feel like survival. The battle isn't just physical, it's mental. One man has spent years proving doubters wrong, refusing to be overshadowed. The other has never been told no, never felt the sting of true defeat. Something has to give. As the world watches, the stakes couldn't be higher. For Edwards, a victory solidifies his reign, proving beyond a doubt that he belongs among the greats. For Chimaev, it's about destiny, about proving that his dominance wasn't a flash in the pan but the start of a new era. The tension is palpable, the questions endless. Will Edwards' composure withstand the storm? Can Chimaev's ferocity break the unbreakable? 2 men, 1 belt, and a collision that will shake the sport to its core. The octagon is set, the lights burn bright, and as they walk toward their moment of truth, the world holds its breath. The answer is coming, but not yet. The moment the fight was announced, the MMA world split in 2. Some saw Leon Edwards as the champion who had already climbed the mountain, a man who had faced adversity, adapted, and emerged sharper than ever. Others believed Khamzat Chimaev was an inevitability, a force of nature that could not be denied. Social media exploded with predictions, fighters weighed in with their takes, and analysts dissected every possible scenario. But behind all the noise, 2 men were preparing for war in silence. Edwards knew what was coming. Chimaev didn't just fight, he hunted. His game plan wasn't built on patience or point scoring. It was destruction from the opening bell. But Edwards had spent his entire career defying expectations. He had faced wrestlers before, endured pressure, and found ways to turn the tide. He wasn't about to let one man dictate the pace. In the quiet of his training camp, he drilled every possible scenario. He knew Chimaev would come fast, that the first few minutes would be chaos. If he survived that storm, if he forced the challenger into deeper waters, the fight could become his. But Chimaev's camp had its own strategy, and it was unlike anything Edwards had seen before. His usual aggression wasn't going to be reckless this time, it was going to be calculated. The wrestling, the relentless forward pressure, the suffocating pace would be there, but this time it would be controlled. Chimaev wasn't just planning to win. He was planning to break Edwards in a way no one had before. The whispers from training partners were chilling. He had never looked this sharp, never been this focused. There were no distractions, no reckless weight cuts, no wasted movement. He wasn't just coming for the belt, he was coming to make a statement that no one in the division, no one in the entire sport could ignore. Then, as fight week approached, something unexpected happened. Reports surfaced of an altercation behind the scenes. Not the usual press conference banter or social media jabs, this was real. Details were scarce, but rumors swirled that Edwards and Chimaev had crossed paths at the Fighter Hotel. Security had to step in. Some said words were exchanged. Others claimed Chimaev had to be pulled away before things escalated. The UFC remained silent, adding to the tension. Whether true or exaggerated, it only added more fuel to the fire. Fight night arrived, and the energy inside the arena was electric. Fans were split, chants overlapping as both men made their walk to the octagon. Edwards, calm and composed, radiated confidence. Chimaev, eyes locked forward, carried an intensity that could be felt from the rafters. The cage door shut, the referee stepped in, and the moment the fight began, the world braced for the storm. Then, just as the first exchange unfolded, something no one expected happened. The opening seconds were a blur of movement, a clash of strategy and instinct that had the crowd roaring before a single strike had fully landed. Chimaev came forward like a man possessed, cutting off the cage with a precision that only the truly elite could manage. He feinted low, then shot in, hands wrapping around Edwards with terrifying speed. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Would the champion be able to withstand the onslaught, or would Chimaev's pressure overwhelm him as it had so many others? Edwards didn't panic. His footwork, honed through years of discipline, kept him just out of reach of the takedown. He framed against Chimaev's shoulder, dug in an underhook, and turned off the fence in a single smooth motion. But Chimaev had anticipated that, chaining his attack into a trip that sent Edwards stumbling just enough to lose balance. For the first time in the fight, the champion was down. The crowd erupted as Chimaev rained down punches, his ferocity on full display. Edwards, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow, stayed composed. He tied up Chimaev's arms, forcing a break in the action, then scooted to the fence, planting his feet. In a sudden, explosive burst, he stood up, shaking Chimaev off just enough to create space. A short elbow from Edwards caught the challenger clean. Chimaev grinned through it, but for the first time, there was a flicker of something in his eyes: surprise. The rounds played out in a brutal back and forth, each man forcing the other to dig deeper than ever before. Edwards' precision striking found its mark, his kicks slowing Chimaev's relentless pursuit. But the challenger refused to be denied, his takedowns relentless, his pressure suffocating. The fight had become something greater than technique or skill. It was a battle of willpower, of endurance, of sheer determination. Then came the final round. Both men were battered, exhausted, but neither willing to back down. The fight had been too close to call, the momentum shifting with every exchange. Chimaev, sensing the urgency, drove forward with everything he had, locking his arms around Edwards and lifting him off his feet. But just as he slammed the champion down, Edwards rolled with the motion, using the momentum to reverse position. In a blink, he was on top, pinning Chimaev against the canvas. The crowd was deafening as Edwards postured up, raining down elbows that left Chimaev bloodied for the first time in his career. The challenger, so dominant for so long, now found himself in a place he had never been before, moments away from defeat. But just when it seemed over, Chimaev did the unthinkable. With one final desperate explosion, he twisted, using sheer force to create an opening. He surged to his feet, wobbling but defiant, and threw a wild right hand with everything he had left. It missed. Edwards, calm in the chaos, saw his opening. A perfectly timed counter clean, precise, devastating. Chimaev's legs buckled, his body crumpling to the canvas as the referee dove in. It was over. The arena was in shock. A fight that could have gone either way had ended in a flash, a champion proving once again why he wore the crown. Edwards stood over his fallen challenger, chest rising and falling, the weight of the battle visible in his eyes. Chimaev, dazed but still conscious, slowly pushed himself up, shaking his head as if refusing to accept what had just happened. Then, in a moment that no one expected, he reached out, gripping Edwards' wrist, and gave the slightest nod of respect. No words were spoken. None were needed. Two warriors had left everything inside that cage, and in the end, only one could stand victorious. But the question remained, was this the end of their story, or just the beginning of something even greater?